Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. So, how many emotions can you name? And how many of those can you actually describe in a way that makes someone else truly understand what you're feeling? My guest today is an author who spent nearly a decade researching the answers to those questions and more. Earl Johnston's new book, Choosing Emotions, Thinking with Your Head and Acting with Your Heart, is really unlike any other book on this topic, and it's shaping the way people think about and talk about emotions. Thank you so much for being here, Doug. The proof is in the notes and the writing in the book. I am fascinated by this book. I want to start a little bit. The book lists 272 different emotional states. It's part definition. It's part emotional phrases, heart phrases, I think you call them at some point. But I want to start with where the idea for this book came from. I believe it was a friend of yours who was asking for help describing what depression was like.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Ivy. The background on the book is that I spent many years as a corporate executive with a team of people researching highly complex business problems. And ultimately, I was getting hired by some of the top law firms in the country as a professional researcher. So 10 years ago, me as a researcher, I'm having dinner with my daughter, who was then in 8th grade. And I decided, she knew that I was a researcher. She was a good student. I decided, Ivy, instead of simply giving her an allowance, I would have her earn it. And so I would bring to dinner, she got to pick the restaurant. It was just a father-daughter dinner. I would bring to dinner a list of 150 to 200 questions about anything. It could be history, geography, art, music, science, you name it. And if she got the right answer, I had also brought a stack of $2 bills. So if she got the right answer, I would slide a $2 bill across the table to her. It was a huge hit. She loved it. I got the opportunity to see sort of where my daughter was, which is, not every parent of a teenager knows quite what's up with their kids, but we laughed a lot. It was fun. 2 years into that, she's now in 10th grade. She was calling me, gee, Dad, can we play College Bowl again? Because she wanted, a good allowance. So we met for dinner in 10th grade, and she arrives with a very sullen face. And she said, Dad, can I ask the questions tonight? I said, of course. She said, what do you know about depression? And Ivy, I faked it because of my business background. I faked it. And I said, well, it's just depression is a slowdown in business activity, et cetera. And she said, no, not that kind of depression, emotional depression. And I was just stunned. I was a deer in headlights. I did not know anything about depression except that somebody was sad.
Right.
And so I said, sweetheart, I've got homework to do. So for the next 2 weeks, I started to dig in. I went to Barnes and Noble. I went online. I was surrounded by books and articles from very capable psychologists, but they weren't, in my mind, at a point where they could help my 13-year-old, or at this point, 15-year-old daughter. 2 days into it, I came across a quote from a writer from the 1950s. His name was Rollo May, M-A-Y. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he was arguably one of the first self-help writers before anybody even heard the term self-help. He had his PhD, bachelor's in divinity. He was a pretty widely regarded writer at the time. His quote, and he had survived depression himself. His quote was, depression is the inability to construct a future. And the moment I read that, I thought, wow, that's a whole lot more than just somebody being sad. That explains why you can't get out of bed in the morning.
Right.
A couple of days later, I came across another quote from a different writer. I'm sure you'll know who J.K. Rowling is. She's the author of the Harry Potter series. Sure. I think that makes her the number one writer in world history, if I have it right. Yeah. She, too, had suffered from depression as a young woman before she became a successful writer and novelist. And her quote about depression was, depression is that absence of being able to envision that you will ever be cheerful again. It's the most unpleasant thing I've ever experienced. Well, suddenly I was starting to get dimension as to what depression really was. And the third quote, a couple of days after that, was from a writer, a very fine freelance writer by the name of Haley Cornell. she too had recovered from depression. And her quote was, "Depression lies to you. It tells you you've always felt this way and you always will, but you haven't and you won't."
Mm.
And so there I'm sitting at my desk. My daughter's across town. I'm 10 days into my research, and I decided, what the heck? I'm just going to text them to my daughter. Maybe it will help her. And so I entered all three quotes and texted my daughter. It was 10 in the morning. She was in class. She shouldn't have been looking at her cell phone, but she was. And I pressed send. And 3 minutes later, I get the response by text, "I'm crying." And I'm alarmed. All right, why are you alarmed?
Right.
Pardon me, why are you crying? These are all people that had depression and recovered from it. There's hope. And her response was, "That's why I'm crying. Thank you, Dad."
Oh,
Well, that was a wonderful father-daughter moment.
sure.
And yet the deeper story, my daughter recovered nicely in a couple of months. She had been out of school for a month with an injury and surgery. And so she obviously had that as the real cause for her predicament. But we were on to something, Ivy. We were on to the notion of describing emotions not by how they look, but by how they feel, and through the experiences of people who have lived them.
Yeah.
And that's really not been done before, as we learned. So we went from depression to anxiety to OCD to codependence. These are not emotions my daughter suffered, but we were investigating. It was kind of a fun project. And ultimately, 9.5 years later, we had 272 different emotions as described by 8,000 quotes and day-to-day phrases that people use who have experienced them. A lot of them are very happy emotions, their excitement, their enthusiasm. But obviously we started with her problem, and that's what started the whole book.
And I want you touched on this, and you wrote in the book, and I pulled it out because I thought it was so powerful. You said what it looks like. You talk about emotions. What it looks like is essential to the scientist, but what it feels like is even more essential to the patient or person. The best contributors to understanding emotions are often veteran experts with direct personal experience. Is it that it becomes more relatable and it becomes more human and not as scientific? You write also about how the scientific definition is the black and white, and the description is the color. It's what makes it feel. It's what makes it feel.
It's what makes it feel. So to answer your question, the scientist, let's say that you are in your office there or in your studio, you have a person sitting at a table quietly 10 feet from you. Their hands are folded. They're not saying a word.
Right.
And the scientist would say, that person is calm.
Mm.
I mean, by outward appearances, that person is calm, but that same person might be boiling mad inside.
Mm.
And so emotions are that phenomenon where it might look one way, but feel another. And what I chose to do in the book was discuss how it feels to be enthusiastic, how it feels to be empathetic, how it feels to be excited, how it feels to be angry, and to use the quotes of people who have obviously been successful in their lives to describe that. And it's never been done. It is almost as though the core of the book is the inner soundtrack of your mind.
Yes.
And it's often very helpful. So many people, Ivy, as you know, have trouble articulating their emotions. For example, again, I'm not a psychologist, but there are a number of psychologists I've been to in my life who are worth their weight in gold. But let's imagine that you're a psychologist for a moment, and across the room from you is your patient, and you ask them, well, what's the problem? What's going on? You check in with them.
Right.
And the patient struggles for words, doesn't really know exactly what's bothering them. And so the patient might say, well, I'm anxious. I'm anxious all the time. That's it. I'm anxious. Right. Well, so the psychologist, the therapist looks at that and says, well, anxiety, I kind of know how to deal with that. But what if the real problem is addiction, not anxiety? And the patient is just struggling for the right word. Either they're embarrassed or they don't have the words, the vocabulary. And so what we've done in accumulating all of these experiential quotes is to really help facilitate people get in touch with their inner voice, with what's really troubling them. If the patient is asked, look down this list of what 20 to 40 people throughout history have said when they were anxious or addicted, and you go, yeah, that's that one, that's it, that's the
Yeah.
one that really gets what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
It
And
becomes very helpful.
it was so interesting to me that this hasn't been done before, because I feel like, it, if I wanted to write to someone about love or about sadness, I would look for quotes that help describe what I'm trying to say. And you've done all of that work basically, and put it all in one place, and it's described as an emotional dictionary and an emotionary, but it's really it's really beautiful. I'm curious. I think there's about a quarter of the emotional states in this book that are not listed in other psychological textbooks. So how did you come up with the 272 emotional states?
Thank you. I'm going to give you a long answer, so apologies in advance.
It's okay.
You may have seen that. You may recall the movie Forrest Gump,
Yes.
where a third of the way through the movie he starts to run.
Yes.
It's his self-expression. He just is quietly running, and over the months and years, he runs from the East Coast to the West Coast and the West Coast to the East Coast, and he assembles this huge crowd of people following him because he's sort of a wise man. He's sort of a savant. And at one point in the Utah desert, he stops. And he's reached what he needed to reach. Well, that point for me was 9.5 years into it. It was last summer. I really I put an end to it. I mean, I did not have any other words that really arose as words that needed description, and that number was 272. But since you ask, and it's also a humorous thing. So the book was published in December, January, just a couple of months ago. And in January, a friend of mine called. He said, I'm looking through your book. It's really fun. It's really helpful. He said, you ought to submit it to AI for evaluation. And I thought, well, I said, the book is purely human. I mean, all the quotes,
Sure.
all the phrases, all the terms are what people say when they're excited or angry or addicted or curious or whatever their emotion is, or codependent. He said, no. I'm not debating that you didn't use AI in it, but why don't you submit the manuscript to AI and just see what insights it has? And so here I had 130,000 word manuscript, 376 pages, 8,000 quotes and phrases. And my finger is hovering over, do I submit it to ChatGPT or not? Do I submit to Claude AI or not? And I thought, you know what? I'm pleased with the book. I press send. 3 minutes later, very surprisingly, both ChatGPT and Claude responded, this is the single most comprehensive reference book on emotions in the English language.
Wow.
Which stunned me. I mean, I wasn't trying to do that. I thought, come on, certainly there have been thousands of books written about emotions, and there have been, and quite many of them are excellent, but nobody has ever in one book done this for all emotions. It's more common for a psychologist to be an expert in determination or anxiety, but nobody's ever done it in one book. And so I was initially skeptical. I thought, well, Claude AI and ChatGPT are both saying the same thing. Please double check this. And they each responded, no, we know what we're talking about.
Wow.
And you've actually done this. But to repeat, the viewpoint is that it's never been done in one place before, but it's especially never been done from the viewpoint of what it feels like rather than what it looks like, which is really what you just said.
It's amazing. It's amazing. We have to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll have more with D. Earl Johnston right after this. Doug, the name of the book is Choosing Emotions, which sort of indicates that we have a control over what we feel. What's the difference between feeling an emotion and reacting to an emotion, and do we really have control over any of that?
Love the question. Thank you. So, oftentimes people are afraid of their emotions. And I came across a wonderful quote from Winston Churchill, the famous former Prime Minister of England. So, imagine that it's 1943 and 1944. You live in London. There's no television, of course, at that time. And every night, the Nazis were sending buzz bombs to London, and just indiscriminately into various neighborhoods. It was a time of great terror. That's what Hitler and the Nazis wanted. They wanted to frighten the British into submission and surrender.
Yeah.
So Winston Churchill goes on the BBC, the national radio station program, and he gives a speech to the entire nation. And he used just 8 words, which I think are really important to understanding emotions. His speech included these 8 words: fear is a reaction, courage is a decision. And
Wow.
he later won the Nobel Prize for Literature, in addition to being Prime Minister of England. Why? Because he obviously had a remarkable facility for words. But to answer your question, we often think of ourselves as reacting to emotion. You touch a hot stove, obviously you're going to pull your hand back.
Right.
You experience angry people, you want to withdraw. And that's normal. But we can also be not only victims, but we can be victors. So emotions are really 2 things. They allow us to react, and they also allow us to advance our lives. And sometimes that gets hidden or forgotten. And in that sense, emotions really are navigational. They allow us to move away from things that are not good for us, and they allow us to move toward things that are love and affection and curiosity and wonder and zeal. Those are all bona fide emotions that you can choose.
Yeah.
And so, Ivy, when we're happiest, really, we're choosing. We're choosing what we do. We're choosing emotions, and that's why I used choosing emotions in the title, because when we're happiest, we're choosing them.
And the other part of the title is thinking with your head and acting with your heart. Can you do both at the same time?
Boy, I love your questions. The latest in science, and I'm talking about cross-disciplinary. So, there people who are nuclear physicists, there are psychologists, there's psychiatrists, there linguists, they're writers, they're artists. The general agreement, nearly unanimous, is that when we're at our happiest, we're uniting both our head and our heart. Science has proven for sure that the heart and brain each have neurons, many of them, and people think, gee, but my heart has neurons. Yes, your heart has neurons. It actually thinks. It actually communicates with your brain. So the 2 of them are a system. And if you will reflect, Ivy, on people that you've known who were happiest, you might also think, you know what, that person had their head screwed on right. Their head and their heart were in harmony. And so that sort of goes hand in hand. It's true scientifically that your head and your heart each have neurons, that they do communicate. Science is absolutely in unanimity on that front. But articulating that, I want my head and my heart to be on the same page.
Right.
That's the mark of a happy person.
Yeah, it feels
And
peaceful.
you see it over and over. You see it over and over in life. And so one of the issues that the points that I spent a lot of time researching was the difference between what sort of your head rules and what your heart rules. And if I may, I'm going to flip to a page in the book that's significant. This goes back centuries. So I'm going to describe for a moment what great thinkers across multiple disciplines have said is both the domain of the head as compared to the domain of the heart. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
The head is the domain of facts, thoughts, and knowledge, while the heart is the domain of love, emotions, and feelings. The head is in charge of controlling the body. the heart is in charge of the human spirit or soul. In fact, if you were to look at the Oxford Dictionary of the English Language, which is typically regarded as the number one dictionary in the English language in the world, it describes the heart as the seat of the human soul. I thought that
It's
was
beautiful.
pretty remarkable to
Yeah.
find that in the Oxford Dictionary. A couple of other differences between the head and the heart. The head is in charge of science. The heart is in charge of conscience.
Mm.
The head is in charge of intellect. The heart is in charge of intuition. The head is in charge of words. The heart is in charge of poetry.
Mm.
The head is in charge of physics. The heart is in charge of metaphysics.
Wow.
And the list goes on. So they each have their sort of primary domain. I
Yeah.
came across a quote from a pastor. The book is, as you know, Ivy, it's completely inclusive. All faiths, all nations, all continents except Antarctica, all genders are included in the book.
Sure.
So there's no religious bias. There are 40 different religions, at least, covered by quotes in the book. But I came across a quote from a pastor in Houston that moved me the moment I read it. And his quote was, "A change of heart changes everything." And I looked at that quote a dozen times, and I thought, you know what, that man is really onto something,
Yeah.
because we talk about changing our mind. We can change our mind almost like changing our shirt, but when it comes to changing your heart, that's a really fundamental, powerful shift in your basic being.
Yeah.
And that particular quote has stayed with me ever since I read it. I give Todd Stalker great credit for that.
I want to give people one more example just of the beauty of this book. I looked up gratitude. Gratitude is one of my most favorite emotional states, and you in under gratitude, there's the proverb, a grateful heart is a magnet for miracles. There's something that Aesop very famously said, gratitude is the sign of noble souls. He that is hard to please make it nothing in the end. And then there is a quote from someone, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, who said, gratitude is the universal solvent. Stepping back and looking again in gratitude shrinks the issues down to a size we can handle. That is you. And I love that you included yourself throughout this book a little bit. It's just a really, really wonderful book. It's something that, and I don't say this lightly, but it's something that I think everyone needs to have in their house, because it just, you kind of flip through it. Either you can look up the state that you want to feel, or you can just kind of, leaf through it and just, it's so insightful and really so beautiful.
Thank you so very much for noting that. It is for sure, Ivy, the case that in the course of the 7 or 8 or 9,000 hours that I spent putting this book together, each time I came across a quote I liked, I wanted to double check and triple check who authored it, because there, some people occasionally will mimic somebody else and come up with a quote that's a word or two different. But if you'll imagine me working late into the night with my cute little dog at my feet, there were a few occasions where I came up with a quote or a phrase that I thought, that really needs to be said.
Yeah.
And then I would Google it to see if somebody else had said it. But thank you for noting that I added a few here and there. There's another quote that really resonated the moment it popped into my head, which has to do with humor. That sometimes people are afraid of their emotions, or they feel they can't get out from under their emotions. The quote that I came up with is, if you can laugh at an emotion, it does not control you. And
Yeah.
I believe that's really true.
I believe so too.
I came up with it a few years ago, and I haven't found a circumstance where that wasn't true. So thank you. I did add a few here and there of my own.
It's perfect. And the irony is not lost on me that someone who is a profound researcher is the one who is telling us about things that we feel. So that's a whole other topic I think that we could talk about for much longer time. The name of the book is Choosing Emotions, Thinking with Your Head and Acting with Your Heart, D. Earl Johnston. What's the website if people want to get in touch or find out more?
Easy to remember, choosingemotions.com. The book is available in hardback, because it's a good reference book for your shelf, hardback, paperback, and Kindle versions. And it's been doing quite well on Amazon.
As well, it should. Doug, we end each of these conversations with something we call 3 big little questions. We have 30 seconds. We do them rapid fire. Are you ready, sir?
Fire away.
All right. The first one is, how do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
It's a matter of focus. You can change your mind. You can change your focus. You can change your attention. The bad news doesn't necessarily go away, but it minimizes when you focus on something else.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
My go-to karaoke song is an instrumental of the Wild Wild West, the theme from the Wild Wild West. I hum it to myself. I don't sing it because it's instrumental, but I find it's one of the most cheerful songs I know.
Oh, I love that. And then we usually ask people what is their favorite spot in New Jersey. But what for you? What is one of your favorite places to go to when you just need a cool place to go?
Well, my favorite spot in New Jersey is Montclair, which is where both of my parents were born.
Perfect. It's a beautiful place.
How about that?
Doug, thank you so much. I love this conversation. I love this book. Thank you for putting it all together. Someone like me is going to spend a very long time going through this book for many, many years to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ivy, for having me. It's been a wonderful time.
Of course. And that'll do it for today's Big Little Stories. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at Big Little Story Show. I'm Ivy Sharmetz, and I'll talk to you next time.